Hola, so today just some of the delay. Some day show delay.
So once again, hello, welcome everyone. Good morning to some.
Yes.
And I hope you're all doing well.
Today, drink some ranzo. Just a muju to make it zebi. Just a loud lady. Rest.
The topic of today's teaching is the 37 practices of the Bodhisattvas by Gyaltsen Nyoshu Tokme.
As the shiny day,
And I think it's been about a couple of months now that we've started with this text.
다 망보 시라 드로토고 민두 아주 튀르레라 페제 셰로가 니마도 단다고도 드로토 마소스.
And I haven't been able to go over so much of the text up until now. In every session, we've gone over about 2 verses every time.
근데 지금 또 요소 로고 텐소 다 셰로가 니숨 페제 히스 마 저거 도나 텐소 도토나야 보도스.
And I thought of going a little faster, maybe going over 3 or 4 verses every time. I thought that might be good.
네네.
And yet, what to do? So far, this is the rhythm at which we've gone.
근데 텐수에 잠지 스캔 넘버 슈에 텐수에 담다 조디 넘버 슈와보 더 베트남 플로마레 가시지기 나라야 시쇼스 캐스 라렌 건전 알라 딱지 땅이나 간지나 하고 마서 직시시 선부도 되니 나 시에네 타임에 이나 다스타 근데 지교 고만남지게 캐스 라렌기 제와다 아니 텐델라 토스토스타시 네, 지 강토도 지시고요. 근데 나라 지금 너바도 망보 용식이래. 근데 나라는 뒤집도 샤바시고요.
And I'd like to just remind you all a little bit, all of you who are listening now. I've tried my best to go over these practices of the Bodhisattva. Not that I really know much about this text or know that much about what I'm talking about, but I've tried to look at the commentaries of the masters of the past and see what they said about this text, and just share that with you as well as I could.
근데 야슬라랭게 야슬모주 통행제 비야슬라랭 데라 이니 다 마슈 마생기 캐나바 마생기 공도 되니 마카드 이나야 텐수 심바지 이니 kulongde chue education but tidang chue shube kapsu kulongda kunche su yer I taina ya danda kapsu ba ngarang su sama social media ta dende chine online shu undu tenge shu shesa mare tidang chue one kora lami gi dünre ta ji kembore kadi dünla shu ba ina kunje da kulong su ni yer kulongda kunje se de education but sigire kulong se na
Nipa karina.
kunje
Kunju.
Chupa.
La.
Kulongda kunju.
Kunju. Laso.
Kunju se ne chupa ro. Lugi de
Laso
na.
hakaso.
Na zo nawi gi nyendang re. Tene kecha ma shie re. Anda din tanda ngara zo online ni shu do tene shen do tane class ko shira ni hago mi do. Ani
Laso.
ichimbo yibadi nan bigin no ngi ta so de kunju ye chembo re de ina da kulong kunju le jam. Kulong de pe gesumbo res.
Laso.
Ni kulong de ke namba majo ba yena tene chero chis da chi chodang gu korte ta gas la le nang lo la nang shu sa so as kibu
Laso.
kanso ko chumu kibu ding kibu tene rap sene manda kulong chodang manda wa ji shu sha do ne de na shin shin shi sha ne kina ba tene kulong chue ne sember shu ru chis.
And so that being the case, I've probably made many mistakes while explaining this text, and therefore I always make a point to confess these mistakes. And I have another reminder, which is what I remind you at the beginning of each of these sessions before listening to this teaching on 37 practices of the Bodhisattvas by Gyaltsen Nyoshu Tokme. Please remember to set the right motivation. Motivation is extremely important. Generally, when we receive Dharma teachings, there are two things one would usually be reminded of at the beginning of any teaching, and those are motivation and conduct or behavior. And usually if one would be receiving teachings from a Lama in person, it would be quite important to remember conduct as well, such as not speaking during the teaching, one's way of just behaving during the teaching. That's also important, but maybe not so relevant with all of us being here receiving these teachings online. However, even though conduct is important, even more important than that is our motivation. So please, if you have not yet set the right motivation to receive these teachings, please do so now. Think about this now. And this you can do as has been explained in this text. As we have gone over, there is the motivation of beings of highest capacity, middling capacity, and lowest capacity. So there are these different types of motivation. And please then remember and to set the right motivation based on these explanations.
Yes, the Shungila Tomar Geva Legit, Paratu Geva Shungit, Tomar Geva Chungit, Nane, Tomar Geva de Son Sabare, name Bardu Geva Shungit, de la Mondula Chuksuda, Mushikebusum Gilamba Chuksus, Temba. Niginani, Mondro Gichu Dundi, Son Sabare, ni Moshi Gikebusum Gilam Nane, Kibu Chungu Kibu Dingi, Kibu Chembo. Sunginan in that drink ups of Kibu Chimbu Gilam and Delar, Kibu Chimbu Gilam, Dela Antone, the Legitu, that Kazangoma, Mondo Shuba de Kibu Chimbu Gilam, Dela Janju, Janju Gilam, the same Gibas, same Gib. Dedan the drink cups Baba de la Denishuna Dixare. Kunzo Janju is Sam down, Dundam Janju is same Ni Shana Hudu.
And so within this text that we are that we have been going over, there is the virtue in the beginning, the virtue of the introduction, the virtue in the middle, the main part of the text, and the virtue in the end, the virtue of the conclusion. Among these, we've finished the virtue in the beginning and have arrived at the virtue of the main part of the text. Within this section, there are the 7 preliminary stages of practice, which we have already gone over, and the path of the 3 types of beings, or the 3 types of persons. And among the paths of the 3 types of persons, which are the persons of lowest capacity, middling capacity, and highest capacity, we have now arrived at the path for persons of highest capacity. And so, as I've explained before, beings of highest capacity are defined by their resolve to follow the path to enlightenment. So they are defined by their Bodhichitta resolve, by generating the mind of enlightenment. And as for this mind of enlightenment, Bodhichitta, it's important to know that there is a relative Bodhichitta and ultimate Bodhichitta.
장주 계산다 도나고 장주 셈니 제다 조데 니 군조고 장주 계셈데라야 도세 남바니 예와니 두스 아니 담보디 군조 장주 계셈 라 냠샤기 값수 daksin jewa diche ani jeto ko kapsu tense number 2 do jeto ko kapsu kunzo la ni je nyamsha da jeto ni sha nyamsha kapsu daksin jewa gomba shi jeto ko kapsu teni kaso kore tense number 2 do Didi kandirasana da jeto ge ngaranzo chike adesso ore kenge lamjer kenge ma lamde kenda ngaranzo kandijini jeto ge kapsu choba laglen chidange kor tende namba ni dus tering kapsu baba de teni kunzo ge janjo ge sem nyamsha ge kapsu den daksin jewa gombadle
Yes. So the main classification, the main divisions within bodhicitta are that of relative bodhicitta and ultimate bodhicitta. Now, within relative bodhicitta, we can also distinguish between the meditation period and the post-meditation. Relative bodhicitta during the meditation session consists in exchanging oneself and other. In the post-meditation, it consists in 10 different parts, 10 different elements. What does that refer to, these 10 different elements in the post-meditation? These are aspects of conduct and bringing negative circumstances onto the path. But today now we have arrived at the meditation session practice of relative bodhicitta, which is exchanging oneself and others.
Dunga malu dagde dole jung zog bisanji shimpen semle chung dechir dagde shinji dunga da yangda jewa jase lagle yis.
And so the root text for this practice of exchanging oneself and others reads as follows. The practice of all the bodhisattvas is to make a genuine exchange of one's own happiness and well-being for all the sufferings of others. Since all misery comes from seeking happiness for oneself alone, whilst perfect Buddhahood is born from the wish for others' good.
다신 제와 공부스 지단 택과 침벽이 들이 값수바와 나라서 택과 침벽이래 다 자주 있으면 공단 꼴라 데라 지단 니도 공단 다신 냠바 공부다 다신 제와 공부스 니도스.
Now, this practice of exchanging oneself and other generally belongs to practices of the great vehicle. We are now in the context of the great vehicle, Mahayana. And there are really two types of practice. One is equalizing oneself and others, and the other is exchanging oneself and others.
지당 다신 냠바 디 공부 고매도 뭐도 공부레스 다신 제와데 죽라 공부레스.
And generally speaking, one would practice equalizing oneself and others first, and only after that when one practice exchanging oneself and others.
Tene dadi jasalale di shugi rana susu gi 장주 기생 귤라 장 마장라 때니 tene tsenyi ba yi ma yin la tene tene kashi dashi nyamba de ngwa la gong gwe zo yin na da ngarang zo khasin le dambo da wuji na dashi nyamba de ngwa la gong dashi jewa de ju la gong gwe ta ena jase lang le thang da di dewa kashi ki nang lo la tene kora jase uju thome khore ki tsenshi xiao ne zo yamne chi ki khore ki tsenshi xiao ne 다신 제와데 뭐라고 다신 냠바데 제라고 메데지 샤우스타 디디 코란 케주라고 인사래 장주스 모네 장사비기 강사지라 샤 인사래.
And so for us as listeners to these teachings regarding the 37 practices of the Bodhisattvas, those who receive these teachings might have already trained in generating the resolve to reach awakening, or they might not have trained in bodhicitta. They might have authentic bodhicitta or not. And so there are these differences. And generally for a general audience, one would practice equalizing oneself and others before practicing exchanging oneself and others. However, here it seems that Gyaltse Nyoshu Tokme really taught this based on his own, taking himself as an example, based on his own disposition, so that here he is actually teaching exchanging oneself and others before teaching equalizing oneself and other, which is probably the way of doing things if one has already trained, already generated the resolve to reach awakening, already generated bodhicitta.
네 가생 알아서 디 기부 챔버그 람갑수 드네 삼바 장주초도 투게 밤샘게 바세지 갑수 마르시바 딘템바 딘스바 세지도아 드네 치니 냠레 치니 칼레지 온도 드네 잠바네 잉제 귤레게 잉제 디야고 우지 장 야고지 렙차베젤라 드네 당념레 무 지당 장당데 드네 진 장무 다 장당 당보 마시바 하고 되니 당게 심제 탐제 다 랑게 마니 레체버 메바 하고 네 랑라 두말 미데바다 데와 데바다 심제 심바야 두말 미데바다 데와 데바니 네 하고 고치네 네 야야 레온도 잠바 네 갈레게 닝제 네 닝제 네 야레 온도 야포지 곰 네네 오네 장축 세디니 장지 심바 칭이바 지게 레온도 네 딜라 간제 세그스나 나랑도 네 기부 첨부그 람세디 단다 당신 제바세디 신의 레베음사리 레위여사리 나랑 선보다나 Di mado tanda naranzo le tambo di marsheba tintemba diseba den sama hako ne jamba da ningje sam ji gyula jamba da ningje de kunzo be jangju semse de jamba da ningje de mangbo yere 참삼라 jamba ningje de naranzo le tambo de la daja tam de dewa 참삼 timuk dan de dewa 참삼 되니 지금 semba laksamdan dedewa, del dewaji. Ta yakshyo de laksamdan dedewaji yosana, ne shen chezin gi lo de ke ongore. Shen chibu de ke chimbo. Rang chezin de ma dor ongore. Tanda le tam kunzu ge jang kunzu jangju ge sim se de daga nang se ge da.
So previously, I explained that the path for individuals of highest capacity is to generate the mind that is intent upon awakening, generate the resolve of bodhicitta. And one does so, if you remember, by recognizing that all beings have been our mothers, thinking of the kindness of the mother and then repaying this kindness. Based on this recollection, based on this training, one generates loving kindness, and based on that, one generates compassion. And then based on compassion, one would generate equanimity. Usually that's the order in which one trains. So that first one needs to recognize, understand that all sentient beings have been our own mothers throughout our infinite lifetimes. And then one understands that just as we ourselves wish for happiness and do not wish for suffering, so in the same way, all other beings wish for happiness and do not wish for suffering. Based on this understanding, one generates loving kindness, and based on that, one then further develops compassion. And that is actually how one really develops the mind of awakening, and how one becomes a genuine bodhisattva. And so this is actually what the path of beings, of individuals of highest capacity consists in. And if one has reached such a stage, then exchanging oneself and others actually just comes naturally to a person who has reached this stage. However, for us as beginners, we need to go through these steps of first recognizing that all beings have been our mothers, then recollecting the kindness of the mother, and finally repaying the kindness of the mother. And from that, developing loving kindness, based on that, developing compassion. And as beginners, really, we can experience, even within loving kindness and compassion, there are so many ways that we can experience these, such that sometimes our loving kindness and compassion can be mixed with attachment, or sometimes it can be mixed with confusion. Or sometimes, at best, it may really just be associated with a true altruistic intent, with a wish to truly benefit others. And if that's the case, if one has this best type of loving kindness and compassion that is joined with the wish to benefit others, then it comes quite easily to cherish others. And only cherish others. That is to say, that our own self-cherishing will have fallen away, and we really cherish others more than ourselves. And so that, in a nutshell, is the training in relative bodhicitta.
다신 제바 곰바 데레 딜라드니 동아 말리 다도 델레 중세디 다 랑제진 알아서 동아 코르웨기 semje 탐지 동아 중에 다 동아스나 동아 간데세게르스나 딱 알아서라 나사 용예레 되니 균어 롱주 유나 팔라 로기레 삼바기 셈라 유레 미셴바기 나라 카당게도 셈바기 셈라 유레 되니 미카시게 랑라 둥그레세 게 셈라 용그레 되니 나라 칼라라게 미두 삼바기 셈라 유레 다디 다 동아 망고주레 셈라 미용 부용 망고 용해 주요레 다 미딜라 다디 용해기 동아 용해기 참아기 유 가르치기 어르스나 규디 조디 다그드 다드스 다지 버즘발레텐 용고요레스 다지 버즘바스드자네 다 나유라 마세 오게 치고레 게 가이나 나나나나나나 마세도 되니 다 나유 나라테네 되니 나이기 되바디 카리 마두바 이나야 되니 동아 용고요레 nga seduzané nga nagitu nga dikimindu nga ni chagmindu sum chagmindu sejdo di chama dagche par zambalatte ne dela dungal malu se dungal changma khare dungal ji yana korwa dela changma dagde dele jungs dagi deba tangazu deba chembo yongdu zani dunga dingu res dagche par zambalatte ne tene di dunga thamje chungu res.
And so here this verse, which explains the practice of relative bodhicitta, of exchanging oneself and others, explains this, saying, all misery comes from seeking happiness for oneself alone. So basically, all suffering within cyclic existence, within samsara, comes from self-cherishing. When we say all suffering, we mean every type of suffering, whether it's illness, or say if you have wealth, money, the fear of losing one's wealth, the worry that others might scold you, that others might beat you, that one might not get food to eat, and so on and so forth. There are so many worries that we have, so much suffering. That all comes, the one root cause of all of these types of sufferings, all of these worries, is our own personal desires, our own selfish desires, our own self-cherishing is the root of all of these types of suffering. And when we say self-cherishing, we mean this feeling of I exist, me, always thinking me. I alone, right? I have so many desires, and no matter how many of these desires get fulfilled, it doesn't really matter. You can fulfill 1, 2, 3 desires, but still there will be so much worry, so much suffering, because, oh, I am sick, oh, I have this, I have that. There's always 1, 2, 3 more things that aren't going right with us, or that we want and that we're not getting. So all of these sufferings, without exception, the source of them all is selfish desire. It's self-cherishing, basically.
Tangarangdi pe gal chembo da zawa chembo zigi res tangarangdi ngala karina nga pe yakbo goye da nga yakbo chungye da nga kibu chungye da nga thombo chungye da nga kheba chungye da zambali mi samada kari chungye chungara da kheba chakcho kheba nani kheba 토쇼드 차나 제다 나랑 좀 미셴바다 주고 마찬가지 나라 잠불링이 나네 축쇼드 차나 삼바다 되네 미셴바다 가르차네 차 나랑 칼라시부 심쇼드 세라나 제다 미셴바다 가르차네 차 나랑 둘로 약쇼드 그 중나 삼바다 미셴바다 장나 장 나랑 초보차나 삼에다 때 랑기부 차래다 미셴바다 가르차자 tamboshina pena mi chu tamba go na de na ngaran yambola mi covid na de na ta covid mi chu na de ge na 다 미지 쭈직빠지 그냥 나 되게 COVID 나도 quarantine 라 내가 미주 나도 고 나도 차와게 형도 다 나랑 제발 짐바도 슈치 형도 가래 열으나 나랑 고디다 COVID 가디 타나 삼바마도 미셴바 주디 가디 타나 가디 지 야포지 차나 삼바다 페지 유지 말해 나라 야포 차야 담보도 내가 타나 제지 아니 다 덴들라테 형도 덴데 샵다 치 형도 당 dunga di changma rang deba che tha to teni dunga tham che ani rang che ji nam rang deba dejung la teni chungi res.
And I think this is such an important point. Personally, I think that this point is so it's so precious, so important. We're always, all of us in this world, we're always thinking, if only I can get all these good things. Oh, if only I can, these good things can happen to me. I want to be happy. I want to be the best. I want to be, the most high. It doesn't really matter what happens to other people, right? In this world, I want to be the most intelligent. I want to be the most educated. Doesn't really matter what others have. I want to be the richest. Doesn't matter whether others have food or not. I want to eat good food. Doesn't matter whether others have clothes or not. I want to be wearing the best clothes. Doesn't matter whether others may be going cold. I want to have all the nice warm clothes, right? Basically, I want to be happy. And others, we're not so concerned with what happens to others. Let's say maybe, for example, there's you're in quarantine with 10 other people. Everyone has COVID, right? So you're in quarantine with 10 other people. Everyone has COVID, everyone has fever, everyone is sick. But really the only thing that you're concerned about is, when will I get better? I really want to get better. You're probably not thinking much of the other 10 people who are likewise sick, and when will they get better, right? But we're all really just concerned with our own well-being and our own health. So it's always me first, basically. And so just in this way, all of our suffering comes from exactly this mindset, comes from exactly this, these constant selfish desires that we have, this self-cherishing that we have, is at the root of all our misery.
Di Chidang Naranzogi Korwa Kamsan Korwa Segore, Zamling Dilla Tong Yongdu, then the Shuri Mado Yang, Chidang Kansogore, Jaji Gat in the Yowa, Chapki Mari Kansana, Mazula Moshi Mevaya, that did not Lola and then the Maingi, Mone Janju Gism you gained it, then the Maingi, Mambo Yujires, Karsan Moshi Merwa.
Now, it's not that we can say that every single person within the 3 realms of cyclic existence, or every single person in this world is like that 100%, right? It's not that we can say that, of course, but there's many people we don't know. So we can't categorically say that. And, among the people on this earth, it's most likely that there are bodhisattvas, that there are people who are not like that. So I'm not saying this is 100% for everyone the case.
Ida Naranzo, my Mimambogi Tiwa and Tinu, Mountio Carisi, the Sena, Tassimje Tamji, Sambachi, Yunga, those Hako Duse, Narang Tambo Kanga and Pa Troll Matu, Kanga Pase Matu, Tassimje Tamji Sidus and the Pemeseke, Poa Dangimindu, Tambo Narangi, Tenda the Trugudu, Tambo Narangi. Parche de passer guduk se ngajo kombala shabde mongol ligi mangchewadi nga yigze yakbo yongna nga chung yakbo yongna nga kibu yongna nga nasa mena samba shabde mato o senje thamje le kibu yongaya da dunga le dole da thaba thamji kimbe koban la thobe gisedu di kombala shabde yi kombala Ngova inse te mese nyunyo re jaji gyanang ne phisi jaji jaju gupchu sama rangi che dure jaji chu sita nyambo la tambo ta ngarang re te nyam to tene simje tam je se shor la le res mango duks tene.
And myself, I've been asked this question many times. Many people have asked me, said to me, "Oh, it's so difficult to think of all sentient beings. Thinking all sentient beings, that's so difficult to think that way. As long as I am not liberated from suffering, I don't really have the capacity to think of all sentient beings, of liberating all sentient beings. First, I need to be liberated from my misery. I need to overcome my obstacles before thinking of all beings." This many people have told me that, and we can see this also from the pujas, the rituals that are sponsored at the monastery. When people sponsor a puja for specific purposes, most people sponsor pujas for their good health, to succeed on their exams, to be happy, for this and that, for various good things that they want for themselves. It's actually very rare that you see a puja sponsored with a purpose like to liberate all sentient beings, or to bring all sentient beings onto the level of supreme awakening. That's very rare. I think probably like 90% of pujas are sponsored for kind of selfish purposes, and maybe 10% it's a combination of people's personal wishes and wishes for all beings, kind of like on the side as an extra to that.
Di sangma danda kaps baba chanju gisim diri ngaranzu da chanju gisim gome gi kapsu tu yondu teni dikeje da chebar zimba da shen chebar zimba ni di nangni kari gechem chembo yi min se di kola ne di shuri mado yan chitangi raman susu de barwar ngaranzu le thambo hindu tachik du teni lamsang dashin jewa de yong misi dar hindu ta ngaranzu janju sem jang gores jangni ya jangni kara jang yondu teni teni kapsu tu yondu danne dashin the shen chebar zimba the gechembo res et teni rang dunga thamje teni rang ki doba lateni chungwai res ye chingen shuba is.
Now, of course, I'm explaining this today in the context of talking about the practice of exchanging oneself and other within the meditative session, where one generates the resolve to awaken, where one develops bodhicitta. And so that's why I'm speaking of this difference in importance of cherishing oneself versus cherishing others. But of course, generally speaking, since we are all beginners here, of course, your own personal wishes will be important to you. We are not able at the stage we're at to focus one-pointedly on cherishing others. We're not there yet. So, at first you need to train to develop your bodhicitta until you get to the point slowly, you get to the point where you really cherish others more than yourself. You see the importance of cherishing others, and you understand that all suffering comes from self-cherishing.
kapsu teni dashin jeba gomba se di shugure nyamsha se tu rang nyamlen chewe kapsu teni dashin jeba gome ki di shugu du teni ngai teni jin shuba is.
And so today then, within these two aspects of the practice of relative bodhicitta, which is the practice of relative bodhicitta within the meditation session, and then the practice in the post-meditation, Today, I was explaining then the practice within the meditation session, which is this exchange of self and others. So during your practice session, the exchange of self and others. So this is why we were going over this.
네, 다 나대 들라 때네 때네 동아 중구도 때네 다 책니바데 조베 상게 현변샘의 총세 책니바데.
So this was the explanation of how all suffering comes from one's own selfish desires. And then the next line reads, whilst perfect Buddhahood is born from the wish for others' good.
동아스도 딱 걸어왔으기 걸어와 대 동아 대 제부레 대 제부기 규디 되네 도차 셔난티무 독숨 텔라테네 되네 걸어와기 동아 중부레 동아디 조데 다기 도발라테네 중용도 걸어와디 동아다 조베상지 제 셴벤센 뉴퉁세 다다니 찍디 걸어와디 다지 버전 발라테네 중부도 다 조베상지 세디 셴벤센 뉴퉁세가 셴벤센 뉴퉁세도 자네 현재 버전 발라테네 중부도 다 장장보 슈샤나 조베상지 상지 좀 낸데 라조 법담 부다 콩 생년다 첨보래 지당 저 단다 잠불링 될라 알아서 남도 상지 찍고 마임바 되네 지당게 이슈레 힌두레 무슬림레 다 줄로 망보 지기 상지 뭐 미시바 요마레 망치바게 상지 모시게 요레 켈링게 요레 거기 줄로 셴바 이나야 다 켈랭디 콩 남바 임바당 콩베 뉴바침보 임바당 콩 삼기 미자바 연대 망보 열에다 이나네 콘주 참마 켈랭디 김진조디 콩 장주기 셈 신빈 신경지 레두 센 콘주 켈랭게 미 삼보지 플락섬지 여기지 레두 저바 남바 상기 좀 낸데 신레 만다와지 켜버 팍바지 윤대지 콩라도 센데는 쇼로 망치와지기 콩라 모시기래 되니 콩콩게 남다래요 콘조기 로용도 산에 콩 되니 로르규 된조 나로라야 상기 좀 낸데 신라 펜토바기 로르규 망보여라야 되나 빼면서 망보여 오 된조라 때니 콘조라다 인스파이어 제디 조디 상기 좀 낸데 현재 버즈미기 라테니 상기 좀 낸데 되니 콘조 미상마게 콩라 마랑저도 지 간서 거래 cap캡 세지도 상이 좀 내데 누바치다 네고 누바 마랑저 동아다 지 바지셀레게 되니 누바참지 마이바 콩라 셴베 셴라 팽기 셴 닌쳔메바 24/7 콩리기 내가 제리게 요 말에 랑제진 제 난게요 말에 셴제진 샤다 냐두 조두 사두 가르 지나야 시진 심제 동아 탐제 졸레기 레가치고 레오도 때문에 상이 좀 낸데레 콩 충사디 신변기 제진라 때는 총레세 데 족베상지 신변 심레 총스 신패기 셈델라 때는 상기 족베상지 좀 낸데세다 장축세니 데니가 충사디니 현재 버즈말 때는 총레세게 될라 So
this first line that we went over basically was regarding suffering, which is samsara, cyclic existence. In samsara, the result is unhappiness. The result is suffering, and the cause is the three poisons of attachment, ignorance, and anger. So that all unhappiness actually comes from desiring happiness for oneself. All unhappiness comes from one's own selfish desires, and that's what samsara is. That's what cyclic existence is. So this is the first line we went over about how cyclic existence actually comes its origin is in self-cherishing. Now the next line says that, on the other hand, Buddhahood has its origin in cherishing others. So Buddhahood, when we think of Buddhahood, we think of the Buddha, right? Buddha Shakyamuni, for instance, who is very well known throughout the world. Buddha Shakyamuni, most people know of the Buddha, this historical Buddha. People from most religions know about him, whether they are Christian, Muslim, Hindu, and so on and so forth. Most people are aware of the story of the Buddha, except that this was a real person who had quite a powerful person with many qualities, and that the reason for his qualities was his altruistic intent, was his work to benefit others. People generally recognize that the Buddha was a good person, basically a good-hearted person who wished to do well for others. So that's what we mean by Buddha, right? And people generally consider the Buddha to be better than most people, a different type of person, a better type of person who had many qualities. And many people would agree with that. Those who may have read about his life story would know that there are many instances in his life story, so many different ways in which he helped people, in which he benefited people. So really, he's quite an inspiration for many people, I think. And all of this, this Buddha figure that we know of, all of that comes from his altruistic intent to benefit others, from his cherishing others, first and foremost. So that, you know, most people are aware of that. And then we as Buddhists, you know, on top of that, we take refuge in the Buddha. We believe the Buddha has the power to protect us, to help us overcome obstacles. And that is because that's exactly what the Buddha does, day and night, without a break, 24/7, just working for the benefit of beings, never with a selfish intent, never with any selfish desire, always only acting for the welfare of others. His activity nonstop in all of his daily actions, whether walking, sleeping, eating, going around, whatever it is, a Buddha's activity is entirely for the benefit of others, never for their own benefit. And this is what we mean by Buddha. So that really Buddha comes from altruistic intent. The Buddha comes from wishing to benefit others. This altruistic motivation is the source of Buddhas. It is the source of awakening, of enlightenment as well. Benefiting others, wishing to benefit others is the cause of awakening. So it's important for us to understand this.
Around Sanji Jumne, they say the Kusu Jidua, Tanda Legend Kusu, and the Sanji Kusu de Yure, Semado, Sanji Kori, the Sang Jesse, Six Jidua, Jumsen Segre. Di Kusula Segi Yoma, the Manjoji Tamza, Sanji said, and the race and captures you. Sanji said, Moma said the Digba, the new Momba, Digba, led a new Momba, the name Dunga, Pangjalan and never Tamjipa Pang. Sang said the Sang Yana Pang, Segura. Gay said, Tarbachok, Dibu said, with Gay said, the Yunde. Principal Tamji Geba Tarba, Tamji Kimbi Gobang, dendritic top sajuchilla dene sanje segere. The this sanje they are the Kande Chungba the King so much Shembeng sim Dagala, then the Chungjore. The Del Los Gurbaji, PJ, Ujumare sees, Ujumare Sanchez Chunga Gudi. In the end of the name, Champagne gism Latin in the name Sanchez and the Shana Digir. Random Pensions about the Shindians of has gone to Shuba Nashi. Sanchez said, Tell us again.
Now, of course, when we think of the Buddha, such as Buddha Shakyamuni, we think of the Buddha's image, the Buddha's form, which of course the Buddha had a certain image, a certain form, but that's not really what we mean when we say Buddha. When we say Buddha, we're not referring to the image of the Buddha, the form of the Buddha. I'm saying this because some people think like that. Some people take refuge in the Buddha, kind of confusing Buddha with the form of the Buddha. But really, Buddha, what Buddha means, in the Tibetan, this word is formed of two syllables, sang and ge. And sang means to purify or clear away. And so Buddha is one who has abandoned or cleared away all misdeeds, all karma, all afflictive emotions, all obscurations. The one who has cleared away all of these, abandoned all of these, has perfected the purification, sang. The second syllable, ye, means to expand or develop. And so the Buddha is the one who has fully developed all good qualities, fully perfected all excellent qualities, and reached the final goal of liberation and omniscience. And so in that way, it's fully developed, which is gye. And so that's what we mean by sangye, which is the Tibetan word for Buddha. And such a Buddha, where does such a Buddha take its origin? It's exactly as I've explained before. The source of such a Buddha is the wish to benefit others. It's altruistic intent. There is no other cause for Buddhahood than this type of altruistic intent. So in this way, the Buddha is the one who is wholly concerned with benefiting others. And that's why we say that the Buddha is the one who has fully accomplished one's own and others' aims.
Chidan di dashin jewa tanyamba gome di chunju Khora nangla liu chugi nani liu jeba something ki kapsu tini dashin jeba da sanje dashin jeba jibu mayimba sanje shen jebar zimba da simje rang jebar zimba dunga chungya da sanje ni ki chebar Jumsen da keper mangpo ji sung yores di chunju liu geba nangla something kapsu di sama tanda chu tat jasi la len de chu one china pani chu lenje jasi mochu tome koregi demi tanda de la sung shar dasin jewa en chunju nanglo la ya chik denjo nangla da keper da pe mangpo yores sanje da simji ni ki dunga chunga da sanje ni le keper pe mangpo yores da keper zo ji chu du shaba ina chunju khara nanglo la chik de nangla chiba rangi denje rangdun cheba tang tuba shendu shengi denje ba deni lani kebar tes tadi chunju ki duja de kebar ta dangs kiranzo nga mambo shego mares chiba sedo zane nga zo simjen segere rangdun chigyo ki ta dunga tong degi doas ani tuba sangi chumne de shendu ze yendo kuma sangi doas That thing azu mambushi goy mendo dingi la chebarta dance. This to change now for dusha sik thama dusha do.
And so generally these practices of exchanging oneself and other and equalizing oneself and other are explained in more detail in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, entering the way of the Bodhisattva. And within the 10 chapters of this text, these practices are explained in the 8th chapter, the chapter on meditation. And in the context in this chapter of the meditation on equalizing oneself and other, it is said that Buddhas come from cherishing others or from working for others' benefit, while sentient beings come from working for their own benefit. That is the source of the difference between Buddhas and sentient beings. That is the reason why we make a difference between Buddhas and sentient beings. And so this and much more is explained in this 8th chapter on meditation in entering the way of the Bodhisattvas. And really, Gyaltsen Yoshu Tokme kind of condensed this and took this from this text and condensed this in these 37 practices of the Bodhisattvas. And so in this, in the Bodhicharyavatara, in this 8th chapter, Shantideva gives many different reasons why there is a difference between sentient beings and Buddhas. Many different, he gives many explanations of the differences between sentient beings and Buddhas. But it all boils down to one of the final verses in this chapter, where he says, the childish work for their own benefit, while the sages work only for others' benefits. See this difference, and there's really not much more to say. So basically he's saying, look at what makes the difference between Buddhas and childish beings. There's not much, there's nothing else to add to this. So childish beings here refers to sentient beings. And sentient beings are those who are concerned with their own desires and accomplishing their own aims, while the Buddhas are entirely concerned with accomplishing others' aims, with benefiting others. And so really we can see this very clearly, and there's no need to say more.
The day Induzani, Rangje Perzimba, Dan, Shenje Perzimba, Dagi Dewa. De Pate, Shen Dungal di Chule. Tadi Dingi di Yanda Jeva Jaselane Institute, Tadingi Joja Pures. Tadanji Rang Dungal di Amarang Cheperzimba Lateni Chungre. Ani Dewa Sanji ki Dewa Amtharbatan Tabati Shen Cheperzimbala Chungre, Tadingi la Cheperpe Duas, the Induzani di Rang Cheperzimba di Padur, Ani Shen Cheperzimba di Zulengurta. Dingi Gita Joe Japures, Yanda Joa Jazz Lali is a Tayang di Ended. Maranzo Jalak Pate Patsu Tessigi. Yanda Joe Japs to Nigel Peshate, Karamsungala, Colote, Dulote, Kalate, the Joe Japsigi, but Jesse. Rang the good chasing, Rang chasing Latini, Jibo Dunga Chungure, Ani Gu Shen chasing Latini, Ani Taba, Yam, Dewa Chungure. That Garish was in Tanda, Decaps Babati. Chala Pachute Mayimba. Semgi Nanglola. Marambo Semgi Nanglo, Doa, Tangi Semgi Nanglola, Tachi Perzimbe, Sem Jera, Delatin to Machungu. ta di tangi sim di nanglo la shenche bar zimbe ki samlo jera sembachi o di shakur tsukiyo sem nanglo sha ta di sha ta rangche bar zimbe ki ta dugo jera di dunga chungo ra tsu sha zane da shenche bar zimbe ki samlo di sha ne rangche bar zimbe lo di pa dorgur pa meba seyo pa yang che yo marda pa che na teni yang rang che zin de che sha na shen dong ma chung ru ra de che ma shen ba di chu sha rang le me ba yo ba di pa tor me ba de shen che zin gi lo de nga ra yo ma de di chu leng gur da je se do de yang da je se do de di ni je o ja res exchange gu res yang cha la pa su de di de sam lo de ma res yang da je wa ja sa da de chi thun na teni 장주 생각이 라는 차도고 res.
So the practice of all the Bodhisattvas is to make a genuine exchange of one's own happiness and well-being for all the sufferings of others. So we're exchanging cherishing oneself for cherishing others. Whatever happiness we have, we give away, and we take on the suffering of others. In this way, we exchange oneself and other, and that is the practice of the Bodhisattvas. And here we should understand that all of our unhappiness comes from cherishing ourselves, while the happiness of Buddhahood or the happiness of liberation comes from cherishing others. And so there is a great difference between these two, isn't there? And that's why we give away or discard our own self-cherishing and instead take on the mindset of cherishing others. So these are the two things that we are exchanging, and that is the practice of the Bodhisattvas. And therefore, we shouldn't think of this like exchanging things, like exchanging stuff, objects. So I give you this, you know, I give you this thing, you give me that thing. We're not talking about barter in this way, exchanging stuff. What we mean here is that the cause of our own unhappiness is self-cherishing, while the cause of happiness for ourselves, the cause of liberation, is cherishing other. Therefore, it's not that we take something from someone else and then give them something else in exchange. It's not like this. It's rather that the self-cherishing that we have within our own minds, that we throw away, we discard. While instead, what we place in our minds, what we establish in our minds is the mindset of cherishing others. So we get rid of our self-cherishing, which is the cause of our unhappiness, but we're not giving it away to anyone else, because that would just cause them misery as well, right? So we're not giving self-cherishing to anyone. We're just getting rid of our self-cherishing. And instead of that self-cherishing, we are taking on the mindset that cherishes others. So that is how we must do this exchange. And if we are able to do so, then that is the practice of the Bodhisattvas.
Tanda lojong dende manang lola sumyures tonglen ni bo pelmarches tonglen pa tong에 dansu len ni pelmarches ta danging issue ba de samlo chira da je parjin ba da shen je zin ki samlo ti sha da da de laglen ga so khande jin chi gor sen lojong dende manang la tonglen ni bo pelmarches pelni ni di yang chamcham la chu len chamcham la pate and it's in Pelmar, Marching. Cheese and Lojon de Numanala Sundus.
Some
Pate, some Sule, Pelmarsina, Rimbaching.
Oh, that's and so it's said in the 7 points of mind training, alternate the essential points of the giving and taking practice, the Tonglen, alternate in your Tonglen practice, which means sometimes you are giving away. So this, we're talking about this mindset of cherishing oneself or cherishing others, right? And so you alternate between giving away and between taking onto yourself.
Kumdang di damborang ta chungna lu namnang chudu ke tawla lele sembalo le jinisha lu dia namnang chudu ji semba dia lele jinishu tene shu chabe jela rang dün dila ane chungna da semje tham je gomgur rang dün la ta namje nganzu ngondo kapsu tene 마라조 디공고와 소신 고마나시 단다캅스 바와데 랑기 닐라드니 심제 단지 곰톰나 심제 단지 곰마톰나 테네 담보랑기 파마 빈자 테네 랑 독보 종모 데서 곰나 디게리 다 곰톰나니 다 잔다 캅스 바바 갸스 라리 코나 시샤 치나니 테네 다신 제와 곰베 캅스 테네 심제 탐지 심제 탐제 라기 둘라고 심제 탐제 코르바 통마 메반니 사페 레다 묘몽바 아니 디바 아니 룰라 나차 심라 둥알 강아 카데 요바 탐제 중나 데 조당 망보 다디 다신 제와 고문 갑소 동랭 곰당들라 룩수 망보도 가시게 양나 연바도와 연바디 수텐 룩수도 되니 가시게 양 니가 냐보다 당가랑 선보다는 니가 냐보지 난 직사를 섬섬르지도 니가 이제 야야 웁라 웁디야 칼레 야 태용도 자니 콘조 대기 쉬어가기 세코르와 도마메 바니 되니 동아 녀몽바 지바 레당 동아 세디기 되니 류기 나차 생기 강아 다 요즘에 참아 누구디 참아주 갈래 텐진 중나 왜 낙보 또 낙보 스모크다우 도바나시 근데 진 낙보기 다 속라때 근데 참아다디 도바 낙보나시 시네 갈래 수수 레인진 다디 현체 버즈버기 레가들의 삼로들이 이 삼로들 갈래 수키 용제되니 랑게 셈라 샤거바 랑라 톱송 삼바 날라 참마 라송 삼바 근데 진짜 투텐스 수 우글렌도 갈래 다 나고 중나 가시기다 나고 연반에서도 갈래 다 나랑 삼로다는 이간 텐션나 득살 갈래 림바치 먹어지.
And so in terms of how to actually practice this in one's meditation session, first, best would be to sit in the 7-point Vajra posture. And so relax one's body in the 7-point posture and relax one's mind as well. Then one would visualize, if possible, all beings in front of us. We visualize all sentient beings in front of you. Just like in the preliminary practices, we visualize the refuge tree in front of us. So just in the same way, here, if we are able to do so, we would visualize all beings in front of us. If you're not able to do so, you can also just visualize your parents, your relatives, your friends. That's also fine. But if you can, if you're really basing yourself on the explanation in this text of the 37 practices, for instance, then you would visualize all beings in front of you. And visualizing all beings, then as you breathe in, you would take in all beings, karma, negative emotions, obscurations, physical illnesses, mental unhappiness, all the different types of suffering you take in as you breathe in. Now, there are many different ways actually of practicing Tonglen, of practicing this giving and taking practice. Some people practice by taking in from the left nostril so that they breathe in all bad things with the left nostril. But I think it's fine to just practice breathing from both nostrils at the same time. And so, as I was just explaining, basically one breathes in all negative things that have been accrued in samsara from beginningless time, all the illness, all the unhappiness, all the physical problems, all the mental difficulties. We draw all of these in as we breathe in, and we can visualize this to be like a black light or like smoke. So like some kind of black smoke that we breathe in. And this is how we kind of take in the mindset of benefiting others, of cherishing others, thinking, oh, I've received all of the negativity of all beings. I've taken this onto myself. So as I was saying, some people do this just with the left nostril. I think it's fine to do it with both nostrils.
이제들이 니바디 담보지 다디 라나소소기 간디 답 레바도 간디 답 데바도 디치레 아니 답우마 유바디 야테는 라바디 데샤 알레 야테 드니 양 다디 유바시 예바니 마 가서 우땅 야나 마진 마테바 에디지도 우 가서 나고 예바니 푸자도 다다니 지바레 세커와토마 메바니 삭비 랑기 게와 테니 짐바 술짐 쇠바 준주 something 셔럽 라조바 페 가리 요바 랑기 루기 데와 랑기 데와 다니 루기 나차 셴기 랭기 랑기 대화디 루기 루 배착보 약보 탕보 윤조 디사마 되니 나고 예바니 다디랑 되바레 니 켄나바 가리탑 되바디 예바니 마 뷰지 마 칼레 뷰니 되니 파 뷰용도자니 양디 다다이게 디 짐바 출림 소바 준데 사마디 야 카도 나신 까르보지 왜 까르보지 마 랑기 나고 예바니 마데 암 야나 나고 이바니 니가니 마데 제네 부인 피용도 갈레병도 심제 탐제라 되니 톱송 사바 컨트롤 톱도 되니 류 데오 톱 셈데와 톱 되니 짐바 출림 소바 준비 삼데 셔럽 펜 사마 톱송 사바 컨트롤 가송 사바 컨트롤 끼송 사바 들리지니 바 다디 카르보 왜 카르보데 콘조 나고 아주 나고 예바니 뷰 콘조가 나고 예바니야 다 주치니 되니 콘조게 셈기 낭로라 되니 데 펜 참아 톱송 아주 삼거 오네 코란데 셈바 딩니 삼거 디 삼도 되니 네이션 넘버 슈 바 셈발라 샤 셴지진디 랑라 샤 아니 랑 제퍼 짐바디 파 도르시도 자니 디 메바랑신 차고 아니 데레지오나 페페쳔보여레스 네니 랑이나 쳇딜라드니 나차 메바타 셈바 데보 용에다 아니 지게 멤버 메인기 나네 메 약쇼라고 차도랑 내 뱅가데 암지 마페나 담메 약쇼지 디레 랑디 대화상마 현라테 현기 동화상마 술래요나 원네 메인기 나네 메인 총도 줄바디 디차유레 가마니 가마숨 되게 지는 곰투나 야보도스 kenomba shueis.
So this is the first step, and really you can do this as seems most comfortable to you, whether you want to do it with both breathing just with both nostrils or alternating the nostrils. And if you alternate nostrils, then you can, when you breathe in with the right nostril. You breathe in with the left nostril, And so you block your nostril like this, and then you breathe out with your right nostril, likewise, alternating with your finger in this way. Or you can breathe with both nostrils, whatever you feel most comfortable with. And so as you, so I just explained how you would, what you visualize as you breathe in, and now as you breathe out, you, in the same way, you offer, you breathe out, you offer everything, all the virtue that you have accumulated in cyclic existence since beginningless time, all the virtue resulting from your practice of generosity, discipline, patience, diligence, meditation, and wisdom, and all the benefits that come from these qualities, all the physical ease, the good health, physical strength, as well as happiness. So previously we were taking in all other beings, illnesses and so on, and now we're giving them all of our health, all of our well-being. And so all of the virtue as well as its results, we breathe out, visualizing, just as before we visualized that we were breathing in dark light or dark smoke. Now we're breathing out white light, either just from the right nostril or from both nostrils. And so as we do so, we offer all of this to all sentient beings. So we offer them, we think that they've actually obtained, just as before we thought that we had actually taken on all the suffering of beings. Now we really think that they have actually obtained all of our virtue, all of our virtue of generosity, discipline, patience, diligence, meditation, and wisdom, as well as all the benefits that come from these practices. And as they obtain all of this, they obtain physical well-being as well as mental well-being. They are happy and content. And so in this way, you alternate breathing out white light, breathing in the dark smoke, and thinking when you breathe out this white light that they have actually obtained all good things and all benefits. And so you should really think this kind of from the bottom of your heart, really, that you're offering all this to beings and that they are receiving all this. And so that is how one how one establishes cherishing others within one's mind and gets rid of one's own self-cherishing. So you're basically breathing out, extracting, getting rid of your self-cherishing, throwing it away from your mind, and instead taking in, placing in your mind the attitude of wishing for others' benefits. And truly this practice has tremendous benefit. It carries tremendous benefit for yourself if you're able to practice this. It brings good health, it brings mental well-being. Honestly, I think this is the best medicine, better than relying on a doctor, is to do this practice. It's to take on others' unhappiness and to give your own happiness to others is the best out of all types of medicine. And so if you're able to do so for 2 or 3 minutes, then I just want to share with you how beneficial this practice is.
Yeah, lendu di we napo ya na lung napo dunga di chunje la lung napo ya na we napo chi dini ma te tu di rangi dewa re jibba chudem khare ma te tu we karpo ya na lung karpo da napo ni ma te tu ya ga te tu we karpo chi lung karpo chi Migmar na degree ya lendu yana lung nakpo we nakpo lung sula ten chule dinit tel marche
So
rest.
when you breathe in, you're visualizing that you're breathing in the dark or black light or a black type of wind. And then when you breathe out, you're breathing out all good things, all happiness. And this you visualize as white light or a white wind, white breath. So this is how you visualize.
Kamachi ngarajo rangi chu lenche na go yomba ni ugya khale thenche tene shenge se kharwa tama member do dungal re se digi lugi na cha re tene le re dunga nyomo btipa tipa tham che chu then ke number leno chis tene kamachi ma na go eba ni ma phuche tene rangi dewa dam chamba ma teru chis and tox gomro chis.
And so for a minute, we'll meditate in this way as we breathe in, breathing in as black light, all of the suffering endured by beings in cyclic existence since beginningless time, all of the mental unhappiness, the physical illness, the karma afflictions, and obscurations, all of this we breathe in and take onto ourselves with the right nostril, and then we breathe with the left nostril, and then we breathe out with the right nostril, all good things, all of our happiness. And so please meditate in this way for a minute or so.
Hola, so.
Okay.
Yes. That did it. Kama ni kama sum chine de ni mala chungna tu ni tu sum tu shi de rang su zure. Ani logic lo ni lo sum kazi de de ngone ji ya bu ji gom tu ba ina. Tene ji ngoma lorju yure. Ngama lama ji tende gom je de ni shudi ga shude kapsu. Te rang ngone len tu be gi mi ba ji rang la 중그레스 가서 되네 곰데 단다단 알아서 mikpa지 곰디게라 언니 락렌다 투고요 말에 나줄라 에 단다디 디차요 말에 자주기 셈 장투비요 말에 딱 된데 지지 로망보지 뭐네 야포지 지투바이나 되네 자주기 셈디 야포지 장 되네 장투바이네 랄레모네 따투거든요 마 게비신이 지게 슈데가라 슈데도 람달미지기 kil라 도슈라 killo doshu do tini kongita tonglengi nyamle chiyo do zani killo do pokwa da rinda jamli simbo lama kona la pokwa gi di ngone nyong yo do kong shutin ma zarson resele tene de abu temba gi namda lorji do mare ngone de chung ba tini lorji yore tende ngazo ma ba nyamle abu ji sona tene shengi dunga ngone len tubegi 단다다 나저지 단다도 수고야 보다 된지 가만히 직스 테레다 지금 나야 잘 싫어 민도 가야지 오늘 내 민도 받아래 뒤도 나저기 장주 세 야고 장마도 받아 뒤도 리마치니 간데 갈래 니 장도나 이마치 나저야 된지 지금 렌트웨기 디스질레 톱지 레스.
So if you're able to practice like this 2-3 minutes every day in 1, 2, 3, or 4 sessions, that's up to you. But if you do so a little bit every day for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and are able to practice this well, then it's said that one can really actually be able to take on the suffering of others. There are many stories like that in the past, and these are real stories, not myths in any way, that through really practicing giving and taking in this way, and eventually one can develop the capacity to actually take on in reality other beings suffering. Of course, us, just visualizing this for 2-3 minutes, we're not actually taking on anyone's suffering because we don't have genuine bodhicitta in that way. However, if we're able to develop our bodhicitta and develop genuine bodhicitta, then eventually one would really be able to actually take on others' suffering. So there's a story of a master not so long ago who was actually able, having practiced giving and taking very extensively, he was actually able to take on other suffering, so that one day he was sitting on his throne, sitting on his seat, and in the street outside, someone threw a stone at a dog. But because this master was able to take on the suffering, someone threw the stone at the dog, but this master actually felt the impact of the stone and fell from his throne from the impact of that stone, because he was actually taking on the suffering of the dog. So this is, a true bodhisattva actually has the power to take on the suffering of others. Now, we just meditating like this for 2 or 3 minutes, of course, we're fine. Nothing happened to us. We didn't take on anyone's suffering. But that's because we haven't fully developed genuine bodhicitta. If we continue practicing in this way and training in bodhicitta slowly, then one day we would be able to reach a similar stage.
Ngarazo tanda lamsam tashin jewa gumedi jidang kale khabu res one kale khabu re peshana ta ngarazo dawuji na ngarazo mi ji ngarang la pe dawu shana ya pe ji chogo pe mese to de na pe chogo to ha lewa chogo to ji tene khala shimbu pe mese shimbu ngarang ge favorite khala ji Mara dunla kiong dungla kiong desha. Ta saya tadi chide. Saya chidu jan lamsam tangboji lechi pe tangboji khala to jogo to mi tangboji. Mara dunla le yong na. Ta tiwaji tangso na kari chi. Kerangi khala shimbu di jogo to de re. Kerang shen le tresa re ya yang tresa mare. Ta jase chanju semba do jase 통미 더우래 되니 자세 락렌다 도이나 되니 페제 말에 오늘 정부들 레제해 다 정말 칼라 신부들랑 맞서지 가다 신지진 지기 냠진 지기라 제해 당나랑 더우데 나르서 더우지나 다지 신 다신 제와 시라 공미 통이 미지 강사 더우지나 다 난이 때 투사들 말에 당나랑 저것도 어디도 나랑 사고사래 다 맞은 아니 딕자 마레스니 피지 제가 저도 거를 제가 콜레테 제가 알아서 나서 뭐도 참마도 때디 피지컬 갖고 있지래 디인도 달람상 다신 제와 고메디 지당 알아서 레 담보라 모네 칼에 갖고 디인도 중나 담보 망치와디 다신 냠바 공기를 뭐나 다다 대값 바바디 다신 제와 고메디 카레레스나 야세 라네 단다 कैसे मुझे थोमे ताबू तेने याना गोचंबा तो ये चिगे yang काजू की मैंने चांजू सेंबा की लागलें चिगे कांसा ची konju namba ताबू दा चिक चाशाना तेने दासिन जेवांग में लगूं चिगे रे दी शीशा चिने दांडे दे शीशा बरेस चिदा है ना दासिन न्याबा कुंपो रेस
But for beginners like us, it's very difficult to immediately practice this exchanging oneself and others. You know, if I think of myself, for example, let's say if I'm very, very hungry one day and someone comes and places a very nice meal in front of me, delicious food, and then a hungry beggar comes, a very poor person who's very hungry as well. What would I do? Would I give them my food when I'm so hungry? Now, Bodhisattvas such as Gyaltsen Togme, who truly practice the Bodhisattva's way, would definitely give their food away because they cherish others more than themselves. But for us who haven't cultivated this exchanging oneself and others much, it'd probably be really difficult for us to give away food when we're so hungry. We need to eat, right? We would think we need to eat this food, and you know, perhaps at best, maybe we'd be able to share and give the beggar half and keep the other half. But it would be really difficult for us to give everything away. And so it's very difficult for beginners to immediately exchange themselves and others in this way. And that's why, generally speaking, we would first start with the practice of equalizing oneself and other. But here the text starts first with exchanging oneself and other because it's really kind of from the point of view of Bodhisattvas such as Gyaltsen Tokme himself, his type of practice. Or, for example, another great Bodhisattva would be the Kagyu master Gotsampa. Such beings are able to first start with the practice of exchanging oneself and others. But as I've explained before, generally speaking, for most people, we would start with equalizing oneself and others.
Yanda Jiva Jasa Lalin City, Tanjing, Sik Darangi, Tishi Japsani, Tashin Java Gombeti. Today, Gondang de Dendiji Redus, Chinamba. Tene Dila and Chaba Nidu, Keranzo, Karigombe, Tuna, Tashin Yamba, Dingala Gombore, Le Dambo Baina, that Tosi, Netanji Jase Lalin, Chanju Simba Kurana, Shisha, in the Suno, Tashin Java Gombe. Dini le chabardu tambo chungna ta ngarazu le tambo la ngen la issue ba na shi rangi dewa na shi shenba ya dewa dugyu re shi rangi dungal medyo ma ne shenge ya dungal medyo re nyam chikba hindu ne rang go na rangi go de naza ne pa jaldo ki seba ligi re shenba ya de chikba chikya re samba ta shi nyamba ni chen go na ya go re ane dini chabar de ji res tene the Juladas Chemagi Trini Shugi is Mutuli.
That's about it for today. This was the practice of exchanging oneself and other. But as beginners, we might want to start by equalizing oneself and other. It's up to you. If you really practice based on this text, then you would practice exchanging oneself and other first. That's the difference between the two. For beginners, generally, we would rather equalize oneself and other, thinking just as I wish for happiness, so all others wish for happiness in the same way. Just as I don't want to be unhappy, so all others don't want to be happy, don't want to be unhappy either. When I have a headache and I want to get rid of this headache, others with a headache feel just the same. They want to get rid of their headache just as much as I do. So this type of reflection on equalizing oneself and other. So that's the difference between these two practices, but I will explain the equalizing oneself and other next time.